and I let the thought come and I just like continue, there's days that I can do that. And then there's days that it's just how you said, a whole movie in 5 seconds was created in my mind, and now everyone around me is in danger.
It's more like the intensity and the obsessions behind it, like the frequency and the intensity and the motivation. Like, if I don't fix this, I'm going to be really uncomfortable or something bad's going to happen. So I like to focus a lot on the motivation. That's usually a really good indicator of whether it's OCD or not. And again, what makes that dysfunctional, because there's nothing wrong with you, like you're not harming yourself or anyone by whether you go to the bathroom or not or thinking about it. But it is dysfunctional because it's just taking away from your life, from your ability to be present. Like, I'm sure there's other things that you would rather be doing, maybe engaging with your husband or like watching a show that you really want to watch, or just laying there and relaxing and not having to think about it.
Right.
And I think you'll be surprised by discovering like how resilient you actually are.
Hi friends, before we start this episode, I just wanted to let you know that here in From Someone Who Gets It, we have raw, vulnerable conversations, and sometimes those conversations can trigger others. I want to let you know that in this season, we touch on suicide, infertility, PTSD, and everything in between. So if those are some subjects that are triggering to you, I just want to let you know that you're heard and you're seen and you're not alone. This podcast is for you, and I hope you join us. Hi everyone, welcome to From Someone Who Gets It, a podcast about life, mental health, and everything in between. I'm your host, Marcela, and this season I'll be sitting down with some of my favorite people having raw, vulnerable conversations about goals, dreams, life, and mental health. Every Monday you can find our episodes on the Cultura Talks channel, and I hope you join in.
Okay, so I'm really excited that you're here. I posted on our page that I was looking for an OCD specialist because if you guys don't know at home, it is OCD Awareness Month. And I thought it was very important to talk about a disorder that I think has a stigma to it and people think it's a certain thing. So growing up, you would hear OCD and the first thing that would come to your mind is, oh, you're a clean freak, everything needs to be perfect. Mm-hmm. And that's what we are taught. Mm-hmm. And then the older you get, the more you realize there are different types of OCD. Mm-hmm. And it's a little more complicated than that cup needs to be in a certain position. So I kind of would love to start with how you got into being an OCD specialist and why you did that and what your practice is.
Yeah. So
Tell everybody your name. I'm so sorry.
No, that's it. We got right into it. My name is Ginna Ospina. I'm a licensed mental health counselor in Florida. I have a practice called Florida OCD and Anxiety Specialist, and we focus exclusively on OCD, anxiety, and related disorders. So this is definitely my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
This is what I see day in and day out. I started treating OCD. Well, I was initially, I got into counseling. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to specialize in, but as you go through your internship and all that, you very quickly realize like you need a specialty.
Yeah.
And I had actually struggled with OCD as a child when I was about like 7 or 8 years old. So that seemed to be a really good fit because I had a personal connection to it.
Right.
But also the treatment, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later, is very structured. And I kind of like that.
Right.
Maybe the OCD.
Right. The structure. Yeah, we like that.
The structure. So I like that more than just doing regular talk therapy, which is still like really effective. But this just seems like more of a fit for me.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I got into it. And then I had a more general practice. And then I really just dedicated my practice on focusing on OCD, anxiety, and those related disorders from then on.
Nice. When a patient walks in for the first time, and they don't really realize that they're dealing with the OCD. What do you think? They walk in with, oh, I'm just a really anxious person. Is that usually what you see when you meet a new case?
Some may already have an idea because maybe somebody told them. A lot of times with clients who have some sort of OCD symptoms or tendencies, they'll kind of want to know more themselves, so they'll do a lot of research. And so maybe from their research, they'll have an idea, oh, this may be OCD. So most of the time they have an idea, they're just not sure and they've never been formally diagnosed.
Right.
Or another clinician told them, like, I feel confident enough in giving you a diagnosis, but I am not specialized in it, and this requires more specialized treatment. So it's very rare that they don't have any idea that it's something beyond just general anxiety, because there's something that makes, like, this isn't, no, it's not just me worried about running late to something.
So it's funny because when mental health becomes a trend, it's hard, right? So right now on TikTok, it's like, oh, my OCD is like crazy today. And I'm like, so your OCD is like, make sure this is straight. And I want my OCD is, if I don't pray for every single person in my family when I go to sleep, something bad is going to happen to them. Or I have one thought, for example, I went to post a video of me and my mom the other day. Super cute video. It was like a sad song, but it wasn't anything crazy. I went to post the video and all the thoughts were, wow, maybe you don't spend enough time with her. Wow, how about if today is your last day with her? What? And starts like snowballing these thoughts that you're just like, wait, what's happening? And all my life, I just thought, oh, I'm anxious, and I create these scenarios in my head, not knowing that it's pure OCD.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the different types of OCD? Because I think it's important for people to know that, yes, there is everything needs to be clean, everything needs to be perfect. That is one thing, but then there's pure OCD, there's religious OCD. Like, so let's talk about all those like different ones.
Yeah, for sure. The ones about everything needing to be a certain way, that's definitely a part of it. It goes beyond a preference. Like, if you just prefer something being organized a certain way, but if it's not like that, you're fine. It's not your preference, but it's fine.
Right.
It's more like the intensity and the obsessions behind it, like the frequency and the intensity and the motivation. Like, if I don't fix this, I'm going to be really uncomfortable, or something bad's going to happen. So I like to focus a lot on the motivation. That's usually a really good indicator of whether it's OCD or not.
Okay.
Again, so that's the difference between like preference and, no, this is more clinical.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm really trying to avoid a high level of discomfort or some dreaded event from happening. There's, like you mentioned, there's religious OCD, or also known as like scrupulosity OCD. That is a huge one, because OCD tends to tackle people's values, and obviously faith is such a big value for most of us. So that is a huge one. That example that you gave is a perfect one. A really common one that I feel is not talked about as often is perinatal OCD.
Okay.
And this is typically OCD around like pregnancy or postpartum, and really intrusive, really difficult thoughts, especially for new parents, where they may say like, what if I do something that's going to end up killing my baby, and then it's my fault? And obviously that's a horrible thought to have, especially like in a very vulnerable moment. It doesn't just happen to the women, it happens to men as well. But you want to be embracing and like adjusting to parenthood, especially if it's your first time. And if you're worried with those intrusive thoughts, it's really, really difficult.
Now, I can only speak on like my experience with my OCD, and the older I'm getting, I feel like the harder it is to kind of control it. I think my question is, where do those intrusive thoughts even like come from? Like, how can you be driving and then think like, oh, if I like turn this way, something back, like these thoughts that happen that you're like, yo, if I say these thoughts out loud, someone's gonna think there's something wrong with me. But they just like appear, and it's a discomfort. Like, you're like, I don't want to think these.
Yeah.
So where do those come from, and like, how do those form?
So it's natural for all of us to have some sort of intrusive thoughts.
Okay.
So like, for instance, I was coming down on the Palmetto here today. I was driving my husband's pickup truck, which I don't typically drive.
Right.
And then it's very common to get an intrusive thought of like, what if a truck cuts me off and then like I die? But then that thought quickly goes away, and I moved on, and now I'm here.
Okay.
People who struggle with OCD have a much harder time letting go of those intrusive thoughts in the moment. And so not only letting them go, but they also it's much easier for them to feed into it. So then that continues and continues. And it's just like a spiral of like what ifs of all the worst possible case scenarios in whatever it is coming up for them in that moment.
Right.
And not knowing that, kind of feeding into those thoughts with all those what ifs just perpetuates it.
That's the hardest part is like, okay, if I stay in the discomfort of it and I let the thought come and I just like continue, there's days that I can do that. And then there's days that it's just how you said, a whole movie in 5 seconds was created in my mind, and now everyone around me is in danger because I'm thinking all these like thoughts.
Yeah.
Also, I find a lot of guilt with it. There's this like guilt of, and it goes back to the same thing. So I'll give you an example. My grandfather passed in 2017. He went into the hospital on a Wednesday. I saw him that day. On Friday, my mom calls me to go see him. And I said, I have to work, but I'll see. He was coming home the next day, but I'll see him when he gets home tomorrow. He ended up passing the next day. It was this thought of like, well, if you would have been there, well, if you would have seen him, well, if you would, and it replayed for years. I would like pass like a certain part on the Palmetto where I got like the call and everything, and it would play of like, well, you should have been a better granddaughter. Well, you didn't see him, and it starts snowballing. What exercises can we do when you're in the position of like it's snowballing and you're about to go into a full-blown panic attack type vibe?
Yeah.
How do you stop yourself? And not just because a lot of people say, oh, just don't think about it. Okay, well, if that was easy, we would all be so happy and like living with rainbows and butterflies, but that's not how it works.
Yeah, for sure.
So what tool can we use when we're in that mode?
Yeah. Well, first of all, that experience that you shared, like so many people go through experiences like that. And kind of like what I was saying earlier, it's going to tackle things you value. You're going to value your faith. You're going to value your family. And so it's very easy to feel like the ultimate worry of like, am I a bad person because I wasn't there?
And that's the sentence. And I tell my husband, he's like, but because the same thing happened with my godmother. I was supposed to see her. By the time I went to go see her, she was already like asleep. And it was this whole thing of like, I'm not a good person.
Yeah.
I'm not a good person. And actually everyone's gonna find out that I'm a fraud. And I'm actually like, I've tricked everyone in my life to make them think that I am actually a good person and I'm not. It's like, girl, how do you go there?
Yeah. So when it comes to the intrusive thoughts, what you just described is what we would do in session. And it's essentially, we call it identifying core fears. So in your case, I would say, okay, obviously, aside from the obvious, what would be so bad about you? What was so bad about you not having been there and you having chosen work instead of being there for your grandfather? And then again, aside from the obvious of like, well, I wasn't there in his last days, but like, what do you internalize that as? What does that mean for you? And you said like, for you, it may be like, yeah, maybe I'm a bad person because I chose work over being there for my family. And then I would tell you, okay, so what if you were a bad person? Then what? What's so bad about that? Again, aside from the obvious.
Yeah.
And then what would you say to that? What if you were a bad person in your life? Like you said, I'm a fraud. Maybe the people that I have in my life, like maybe I would lose them eventually. Whatever, your brain may go to. It's typically something like that.
Right.
And obviously that would be scary.
Yeah.
That's a real valid fear. It's just that the way people try to cope with that fear, that part is the part that's ineffective and what we would call like maladaptive.
And now I'm going into other types of OCD because I recently learned about relationship OCD and I did not realize that was a whole thing. And I have an anxiety, like attachment issue, and I've always had that since I was younger. It's gone away, but then learning about relationship OCD and the intrusive thoughts that come with that. I saw a video the other day, and this girl was, she was like doing a sketch, and she's like an OCD specialist, and she does these sketches. And one was she was on vacation with her husband, and the entire time she got into a thing with him. So the entire time her brain was like, is this your partner? Should you be with this person? Is this even the person that you should like be with? It's this whole thing. My husband and I went on our honeymoon recently, and there was one day in Paris that I was very overstimulated. I'm an anxious traveler. I get overstimulated, and I'm like, no one talk to me, don't look at me. And at one point I got really, really bad because I'm like, you're missing all these things. You're wasting all these things. Again, look at you being selfish because all you care about, like, it's these thoughts that, again, it goes back to the same like little core value that you have.
Yeah, in that case, it's very common for people. I have clients right now who are struggling with relationship OCD, and that's their fear. Like, what if I'm a bad person because I'm just leading on this person who I love very much and I care for very much, but maybe it's the wrong person for me. And again, it's very different from somebody being confused about whether this is a good partner for me. That's different. They are sure that it is. They are sure that they love them. They are sure that this is a really good relationship in most cases. It's just the intrusive thoughts. And to answer your question from before, which applies to this as well, the best treatment for this stuff is called ERP, exposure and response prevention.
Okay, tell me a little bit about this.
So when it comes to, well, for any presentation of OCD, that would be the treatment option.
Okay.
You'll probably often hear be referred to as a gold standard treatment, first line treatment, but that is the way to go.
Okay.
Some clients may need a little bit more work before actually getting started with the exposures, but ultimately we are going to be doing exposure therapy because that is the way to go. When it comes to the intrusive thoughts, very often what we'll do is we'll do what are called imaginal exposures. So we'll use those core fears that we identify, and then we'll create a worst case scenario of what that looks like. So if it's in person, we're writing it out together. If it's virtual, I typically share like share my screen and show a Word document, and we write it together. What is the worst case scenario? What is your brain telling you? It might sound completely ridiculous, but perfect. If it does, we want to lean into it. We want to meet it where it's at, because obviously logic hasn't worked.
And that's the whole thing. And I think that's something that people need to understand, that the logic goes out the door.
Exactly. That's why reassurance doesn't work. Because if I tell you, no, you're a great person, that may feel good right now for 30 seconds. And 5 minutes later, you may be like, what if I'm a bad person again?
My husband the other day, I was having a really bad episode, a thought that just kept going and going, and I could not get out of like the loop. And he's one of the most supportive human beings you'll ever meet. But when he sees me in those like loops, all he wants to do is fix it and like tell me how amazing and wonderful I am. And sometimes hearing those things makes me feel even worse. Even worse. Like I'm just like, but I'm not that amazing. I'm not that great. Please, like it's just like because the reassurance is just like the OC is like, oh yeah, give me more, because now I'm going to tell you how bad of a person you are.
So you can tell your husband, and this is what I do a lot in sessions, clients hate it because it's really uncomfortable. But if they come and tell me, what if I'm a bad person? I may say, maybe you are, maybe you aren't. I don't know.
Well, he did that. He said that the other day he goes, and if you are, what?
Yeah.
And there was nothing else to say.
Exactly. Not only that, but that leaves you in uncertainty. I'm not giving you reassurance. And so if you stay in uncertainty, that forces you to have to like deal with that, to build some distrust tolerance, to be like, okay, I may not have the answer to that. That's a possibility. I'm not telling you it isn't. But the more that you're able to tolerate just the thought, as if you were watching like a bad movie or listening to a bad song, I can tolerate that thought. I don't necessarily have to like it. Right. But I can tolerate it and everything's fine. Yeah. And typically that's how, again, there's a whole process to it. I'm kind of just giving you the gist of it, but that's ultimately what you want to do. You want to end up in uncertainty. So kind of going back to the exposures, a worst case scenario we would just kind of set it up. We would give context, and it would likely end at like, and ultimately you are discovered to be a bad person. Your husband thinks you're a bad person. Your family thinks you're a bad person. The people you work with think you're a bad person. Now what? And then, whatever else may come after that.
Right.
And that may be like, well, I realize that I'm a fraud. Now I'm isolated. No one wants to be around me. I'm all alone in the world. My life became nothing. Whatever. So if that's what it is, again, I'm just kind of throwing around general ideas that are super common and that, again, are actually scary. Like that would be horrible if that was somebody's reality. But again, it's just the way that we're approaching it. And you very quickly start to realize, well, for one, you're exposing yourself to that thought, because initially you're getting stuck in the what if I'm a bad person.
Right. And it's like
we're taking
loop.
a step further to like, okay, what if you are?
Right.
Then what? That second part is really, really important, because you're answering that question for yourself, but also, again, not relying on certainty that's not even real. It's kind of like fake certainty for the moment. It's not even going to last.
Right.
But again, the most important part about that is that now you're building this tolerance to handle and deal with distress rather than constantly trying to avoid it.
Right.
Because I'm sure there's other ways that you really try to not be a bad person.
Right.
And so, and we should all do that in general, but I'm just talking about from a more obsessive compulsive kind of way.
Right.
Then you don't really need to do that anymore. That's not something, that you're going to be obsessing about over time. That distress tolerance piece is huge, and especially because people often don't realize how resilient they actually are. So if you're doing that constantly, we would typically do the exposures like on a weekly basis.
Okay.
And most of the time, especially for the imaginal ones, I'll have clients record themselves saying it like on their phone and replay it daily. And that's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But if every day you're doing that, again, that distress tolerance goes all the way up. Your ability to handle risk goes all the way up. Your ability to see yourself as a more resilient and capable person goes all the way up. And now you're not as motivated by fear. You're not hypervigilant. You're not avoiding things that mean something to you.
And I've realized, because my brain is on from the moment I wake, even when I go to sleep, my brain doesn't turn off. I'm exhausted, and it gets exhausting in my brain. Like I tell people, I'm like, no one would survive a day in my brain, because it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. What you're talking about of like being in that discomfort. I did that the other day in the car, and I was like, okay, so you did this. Now what? So what are we gonna do? And the thought just like left. But again, like sometimes that doesn't happen, and I think I want to really talk about how you can support someone who is struggling with OCD, because again, I think that when we have people around us who struggle with depression, struggle with anxiety, struggle with all this, it comes from a good place, but it's just like, oh, but just don't obsess over it, or just don't like go outside, go be with people. And it's like, I don't think what you understand is when it's too much in your head, even having to sit down and be with people, like, it's like, oh, what if these people know like what's happening in my head? And what if what if no one here is actually my friend and they just invite me because they feel so bad?
Yeah.
And it's just like for everything, it's something.
Yeah.
So how do you, if I'm having a really bad episode, and let's say it's not look, you're a bad person, what other tools can the people around me have to help me when I am so stuck that I can't get out of that loop?
Yeah, when it comes to OCD specifically, again, it's very different from general anxiety, where they'll tell you like, take a deep breath if you want. We'll, get there a little bit later so you can calm down. Yeah. That's not going to work.
No.
With OCD. That's definitely not going to work. It's going to make it worse. So they can tell you something like, okay, kind of like we were saying before, maybe that's the case, maybe it isn't, and that's going to be uncomfortable, but I'll be there with you to help you. If that's uncomfortable, then just lean on me. And we'll be uncomfortable together.
Right.
If it's a compulsive behavior, these get enabled all the time. And again, in good faith by loved ones.
Right.
or typically like out of convenience, because sometimes if people have like checking compulsions or contamination compulsions and they need to leave the house as a family, but somebody has to go and wash their hands 10 times and it takes 15 extra minutes, they'll be like, just go, your hands are clean, offering that reassurance,
Right.
which is ineffective, just so that they can get out of the house. Obviously, families are not going to do it perfectly, and I don't
Right.
expect them to, families and loved ones. But generally, if they want to be supportive in helping, it could just be like, you know what, your hands may or may not be clean. But again, if they're not, if something happens, you have us as a support system, and we will deal with it at that point. If they're seeking reassurance, which that's a really common one that people go to family
Yeah.
members and loved ones for. Again, same, like always ending in uncertainty, which sucks.
Yes.
It's horrible. But that is actually more helpful than offering the reassurance. So it's completely opposite of what a loved one would want to do to help. But again, we're not dealing with general anxiety. We're dealing with OCD. And so it's almost in reverse
Right.
what would actually be effective.
Now, since we're talking family and loved ones, going back a little bit to relationship OCD and fights. Because my husband and I spoke about this recently. We got into a tiff. He left, and then I stayed replaying the thing over and over and over and over and over. The entire day I replayed, and then it puts me in a bad thing because I'm like, but why did I have to get there? And why did I get so mad over something that like I didn't need to get mad about? And now he's off. And so I create this whole scenario, which as soon as he walked out the door, he already forgot about the fight.
Yeah.
He called me 10 minutes later. Hey, are you good? And I told him, okay, I can't talk now because now I'm in this like loop, and now I don't feel well, and now like the thoughts are going wild. And he came home that night, and I said to him, we have to be better at, like, if we get into an argument, figuring it out, or like not taking it to a place that now my brain like is replaying the fight, or coming up with all these thoughts just because like we got into a fight, and now I'm like, well, did I marry the right person? Girl, why do we like and it's like you will physically see me if I get a thought that I don't like. I'll literally like try to like shake it out, because I'm like, no, we should not be having those thoughts. Like, that's not a thought that we should be having. And then it goes back to, and you're having that thought because you're a bad person, and you're not. Like, it's wild.
Yeah, so that's indicative of you identifying with the thought versus you just being like, that was a weird thought. I don't want to have that thought, but okay, let it go. And then I'll have the next one.
Yeah.
Again, much easier said than done to let it go.
Yeah.
But we don't need to identify with every single thought. I have all sorts of crazy thoughts. We're all capable of having very weird, morbid, sexual, perverted, like all sorts of thoughts. Our brains are capable of that. Anybody who tells you they don't have those thoughts, they're lying, because it's a very human experience.
Okay.
But again, it just goes back to, are we feeding into it? How are we interacting with it? Is it just like that was weird, okay, let's move on? Or is it, oh, but what if that's true? What if that really represents who I am as a person, how other people see me? Now you're really identifying with it. And obviously that's problematic, because that's not who you are. You don't want to show up as that.
Right.
That's the part that's really tough.
Do you think that's the same as like someone who has a compulsion that they need to like touch something? Do you think that's what my compulsion is just getting to the thought and like feeding into it,
ruminating on it? For sure. Those are mental compulsions.
Okay.
So when people talk about pure O OCD, that it really just refers to people who have obsessions and mental compulsions, but compulsions are still there.
Okay.
They just may be mental acts, like you said earlier about praying, and it had to be for every family member. That's still an act. You're just doing it mentally. So that's still very, very compulsive. Obsessions are just the thoughts that you don't want to have.
Okay.
And they're persistent and recurring and usually disturbing. The compulsions are what you're doing in response to them, even if it's mental. And for there to be a diagnosis, you have to have both, and they typically have to be time consuming, more than an hour per day, which most of the time for people, it's way more than an hour per day.
Way more. Yeah. It's insane. And I think the pure O OCD with the mental compulsions, what's so hard about that is that you're in front of me and you have no idea what I'm doing in my head right now and all the things that I'm checking off and doing. Like, do you think it's a little more exhausting to be in that state? And I'm not taking anything away from anybody else who deals with any other OCD, but being in those thoughts constantly, and before the pod we said this, of like, it can be such a lonely place, because it's like, I don't want to share these thoughts out loud. I don't want to have these thoughts. I'm gonna get emotional. I want to wake up and feel like a normal person. I don't want to. And I think the older I get, the harder it becomes. But listening to these like tools of like, don't engage in the thought, which again, it's easier said than done. And there's some days, and I wonder if hormones and cycles and stuff affect where you are, because I do feel that, you know, the week before I get my period, I'm in a place that it's like, why am I so dark? Why is it so dark here? And how do I get out of this like darkness? It becomes paralyzing. It becomes paralyzing. And I wanted to come on here and talk about this because it is a disorder that not a lot of people talk about, because you feel ashamed. You feel ashamed. Fine. I feel like now, like, everybody talks about depression. Everybody talks about anxiety. But when you have to sit with your own brain and it creates these like movies, you're just like, holy crap, we need to get a hold of this. I want to talk about medication with OCD. Do you like the medication, or do you think, hey, let's find tools that are going to really, really help you live a great life and you don't have to depend on the medication? That's where I'm at right now.
It's a good question. Typically, ERP, the exposure therapy, on its own can be really, really effective.
Okay.
Again, the problem is that there's not a lot of OCD specialists out there, for one. So it's tough for everybody to get the actual care that they need. But when you are doing exposure therapy the way that it needs to be done, it can be really, really effective, and you can find a lot of success with that alone.
Right.
When I see clients who I know they're doing their part, they're very motivated, they're very willing, but it's just like they're having a hard time like crossing that line, that may be a time where we'll talk about medication and a referral for medication. And typically, well, according to research, the only medications that are effective for treating OCD are SSRIs.
And what are those?
Some serotonin uptake inhibitors. Those are the only ones that are going to help with the intrusive thoughts and the obsessions and the compulsions. But that in combination with ERP can be really, really successful if somebody needs the medication. That's more for a psychiatric evaluation. But I will say most of my clients are not on medication, or even past clients, and they've had great success with ERP alone. Because again, the structure of it and the methodology of it is just very different than what you do in regular talk therapy. You're actually addressing it. You're actually putting yourself in those situations. And from doing that on a weekly basis, and with your complementing that with your own efforts during the week, the resilience that you're going to build and the stress tolerance that you're going to build is going to be huge. And so again, there are some people who do need medication, and I'm all for that. But if it's that you haven't tried anything, not just you, but anybody hasn't tried anything, I would go the ERP route first. See how you do with that alone. And if that's not working despite your best efforts, then, talk about, have a conversation about getting on medication.
You mentioned serotonin. And I said this to someone the other day. I feel like when you really struggle with pure OCD, it's because your serotonin levels and dopamine levels, for me, are non-existent. And because those levels that usually make you so happy and so bubbly and so are non-existent, I think that's why the thoughts get so dark. So when you said the serotonin thing, I was like, oh my God, that's so true. And again, there's for example, this was my good week. I call it a good week,
Good, yeah.
My good week, I'm 2 weeks before my period. I'm like no one can stop me. I'm unstoppable. My thoughts are non-existent. So I think that's what's so frustrating about cyclical. It is that there are days that I wake up and my brain is still going, but there's so many thoughts that I'm not thinking about any of them. Like it's like file cabinets open and nothing makes sense. And then there's times that it's just like, oh, okay, now we're gonna go through every single thought that you have. It's wild. What do you want people to take away from this and understand OCD is more than just like a clean freak type thing? Like, what do you want people at home to understand what OCD is and how it really can, it's a disease, a disorder that can really put someone in the darkest place.
Yeah. I think one of the main things, aside from what OCD actually is that if somebody's doing something or really struggling with certain thoughts and it is OCD, like that's something they're really struggling with. It's not a representation of who they are, especially if it's one of those intrusive, morbid, sometimes perverted kind of thoughts.
Yeah.
That's what we call, there's a difference between what we call like egosyntonic thoughts and ego-dystonic thoughts. Egosyntonic are thoughts aligned with your values. Like they represent you the way you want to be represented. Ego-dystonic thoughts are thoughts that are not aligned with your values. So if you are worried, for instance, and this is a very common one, a common presentation of it, if you are worried that you might lose control one day and become a murderer, that would be...
Okay. Those thoughts happen and I'm like,
yeah,
I don't even watch like crazy like crime stuff because I'm like, but it's insane that the brain goes there.
Yeah. So, and obviously you are not a murderer and you would never want to be a murderer.
Correct.
So that's part of what makes it ego-dystonic and so frustrating, is just the fact that like, this is not a representation of who I am. Why am I struggling with these thoughts? Somebody who is a murderer is going to be totally fine with those thoughts, is going to be looking to how can I act out on these thoughts?
Right.
And it's ego-syntonic for them. But most of the time, the intrusive thoughts, the obsessions with OCD are ego-dystonic, and that's what makes them so difficult to deal with.
Yeah.
So, like I said, that typically, if it's that kind of presentation, that it's not a reflection of who the person is. If anything, it's a reflection of how much they care to be the opposite.
Right.
Also, that a lot of like, especially the compulsive behaviors, they're not just preferences, they're not just little quirks, like they are really struggling. And if they really feel, if I don't move that freaking cup right now, like something bad's gonna happen, or I'm gonna be riddled with this discomfort that I'm not gonna be able to handle. And so, you know what, I'd rather not go to wherever I plan to go.
Yesterday, I'm leaving my house and I know that I unplugged the curling iron. I know. And this is something that happens to a lot of... I know I unplugged the curling iron. I'm walking down the stairs to go to my car. The thought, hey, you didn't unplug the thing. And it's like, hey, yeah, I did. I literally remembered, hey, you didn't. You need to go back upstairs and you need to check it. You need to go back upstairs. Well, no, I didn't, because I was like, I'm not going back upstairs.
Yeah.
But throughout the night, every now and then I was like, I hope the apartment doesn't get set on fire. I hope the apartment doesn't get set on fire and we lose everything, because I couldn't go back and just check if I had unplugged it. But I knew I didn't. I did not want to like feed into the behavior of having to go and check something that I know already happened.
And that's one of those presentations that sometimes people will say, well, what's the problem with that? Because I'm just being cautious. Cautious is, hey, I wonder if I turned off the curling iron. Well, no, I'll deal with it when I get home and I'll see. I don't know. Hopefully nothing happens. The thoughts that you're kind of describing, and if you're thinking about it over and over and over, that's not being cautious. That's being obsessive and compulsive, because now your need to constantly ask yourself, and to maybe if you have like home cameras to check, sometimes people go as far as like calling a family member and being like, hey, can you go to my house and make sure?
I got the thought and I was like, well, what if I just call Natalia's my sister. What if I just call Natalia and she'll come over and and I'm like, okay, but she doesn't have a key. Then I have to, it becomes this whole thing. But I was trying to find a solution for a problem that did not even exist. That is what...
And what you just said is really important, because it's all about preparedness, right? I'm trying to prevent my house blowing up, and I want to be prepared, like in case that, prevention, preparedness, Ultimately, control and certainty.
Control, I guess, is like the biggest,
It's a big theme. Yeah.
like a big even like, I know this is so dumb, but even going to the bathroom. Like, I just sat down somewhere. I'm fine. I don't have to use the bathroom, but now it's the thought of like, hey, no, I actually think you do need to use the bathroom. Actually, you 100% need to use the bathroom. If you don't use the bathroom right now, you're not even gonna make it. That's how bad, like, and it's like, wait, it happens to me in bed every single night. I lay in bed and I'm like, no, you need to get up and use the restroom. And it's like, no, I don't need to get up and do anything.
Yeah. And again, what makes that dysfunctional, because there's nothing wrong with you. Like, you're not harming yourself or anyone by whether you go to the bathroom or not, or thinking about it. But it is dysfunctional because it's just taking away from your life, from your ability to be present. Like, I'm sure there's other things that you would rather be doing, maybe engaging with your husband, or like watching a show that you really want to watch, or just laying there and relaxing and not having to think about it.
Right.
That's part of what makes it dysfunctional. Because people, that's another question that people have often. And usually it's because they're intimidated about doing the treatment, because they know it's going to involve them leaning into the things that they're concerned about. They're like, but I'm not hurting anybody. Like, okay, so what if I'm washing my hands 10 times? But it's like, okay, what would you rather be doing than washing your hands 10 times? I have clients who take 3-hour showers.
Yeah.
Who are late to work, who are late to school. What would you rather be doing with 3? Even if it's just, I'd rather be sleeping. Right. It's not like you have to be doing anything super productive.
Right.
But at least that's your choice, and it's not something that you're at the mercy of or that you're obsessed about.
And that's a big thing. I told my husband this. I was like, sometimes I feel like I don't have a choice. Like, sometimes I feel like my brain has already made the choice, and either I go with the choice it's made, or I sit in the discomfort of that. And I always thought that was anxiety. Sitting in a discomfort all the time, I thought that was anxiety. And the older I'm realizing, it's like, oh, no, it's not. It's the OCD. And it's like, if you don't treat it, it's going to become louder and louder and louder. Like,
the more you lean into it, the worse that it gets. The more that you like stop feeding it, then it doesn't have a supply anymore.
Right. And I've seen it. Like, I think that's what becomes so frustrating, is that I've seen the weeks that I can control it, and that it doesn't control me. And I'm just like, oh, had that thought, keep it going. Oh, all right. And then there's weeks that you cannot get me out of the couch because it is just, and they create panic attacks because the thought comes, I go into this whole thought, I get a full-blown panic attack because I can't control the situation. I can't go back and change whatever it was, whatever mistake I did, whatever thing I said, it forms into it. And then there's weeks that I'm fine. So it's hard, and I want to say anyone out there who is dealing with this, and I don't wish this upon my worst enemy. Like, it's exhausting. It takes a lot of resilience. And that's, I guess, I like to say that my mental health is a superpower. And all these things are just preparing me to be the best version of myself. But it's uncomfortable and it's challenging. And there's some days that are harder than others.
Yeah, for sure.
I just want to say thank you for being here.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
For talking about something that not a lot of people are talking about. You're getting a new client soon, so you'll be hearing from me. But it's just, I want to have these open conversations because you shouldn't feel ashamed. If you have OCD, if you deal with depression, you deal with anxiety, it's not who we are. It's part of our story. It's part of our journey, but we could heal from it. Yeah. And I think that's something that I haven't heard. Yeah. So hearing
There's hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said that. Hearing you say that today, that I think the other day when I looked at my husband and I said, I can't do this for the rest of my life. I can't be in this like loop and loop and loop. And hearing you talk about this, all I kept saying was like, oh my God, like I can get better. I can get better. And these thoughts that come up will just come up and I can just keep going with my day. So thank you for at least giving me hope that like this is not something I have to deal with for the rest of my life.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think you'll be surprised by discovering like how resilient you actually are.
No, it has taught me that. And every now and then I'm like, okay, God, that's it. No more. Like, I don't need not one more.
But not through difficulty. That's not what I mean. Like, yes, like not through, because there's resilience of like, my life is hard and obviously I'm resilient because I'm still showing up every day.
Yeah.
The resilience that comes from overcoming something difficult. That's kind of what I'm referring to.
Yeah.
And that kind of resilience tends to be like even more rewarding, because it's like, damn, I did that for myself. And I've been like in the trenches of it at the very, struggling with it in the worst possible way. And now I saw the journey of being able to overcome it. And again, that's very possible.
Yeah.
Like I see that day in and day out with the clients that I work with. It's not, most people think it's far-fetched, but it honestly really is not.
Because when you're so in it, it feels
and when you have
so
no
far.
direction, no guidance, or the wrong guidance.
Right.
Yeah.
For so many years, and now you're like, wait, how do I even control this?
Mm-hmm.
One more time, tell everybody where they can find you. And
So our website is FLOCDandanxiety.com.
Okay.
We also have an Instagram, same handle, FLOCD and anxiety. So feel free to follow us, check out our website. If anybody ever has any questions, or wants to schedule a consultation, anything like that, those are the best ways to find us.
Thank you so much for being here and
No,
for
you're so
talking
welcome.
and
Thank
for
you.
giving all of us a little hope that we can make it through all of this.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yay.